Hi, and welcome everybody to this session about artificial intelligence. I am very excited today to hear the different perspectives that we will hear about artificial intelligence and a lot of user cases about artificial intelligence, and especially as we are in the field in publishing, authoring, ed tech, and of course also device technology. So our speakers today here are experts in their fields, and I'm very happy to welcome Colin Hauer from GOULD FINCH. He will say a few words about himself just in a little while when he will start his presentation. Then I'm also welcoming Gerald from Singapore. He's based in Singapore and is the MD of a company called SnapLearn. And I'm welcoming Mats Rydal from Denmark. He's joining us from Denmark in Europe. And he is working for a company called Cactus Communications. So he'll tell us more about his work as well. And also from Jakarta, joining us, Alfred Boediman from Samsung in Jakarta. So welcome everybody. We will start with Colin. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Okay, while I try to share my screen, just a few words about myself. Colin Hauer, calling from Hamburg today, and for the past, almost 2 decades, I started early, I've been moving between the content industries and technology. Can you see my screen? Hopefully, yes. This looks good. So I'll be talking about artificial intelligence and what it can do for the publishing industry. And first of all, I want to start very briefly by talking about a bit about the definition of AI. What do we actually understand as AI? So there's a lot of different definitions out there. Surely the other speakers today will go a little bit into that as well, but I'll share my view on this with you. So whenever we talk about artificial intelligence these days, we usually mix human intelligence or how we perceive that with what we think AI to be. So whenever we see machines do something that we perceive as intelligent, right? If they do something that reminds us of human intelligence, that's what we typically call artificial intelligence in the general population these days. And you can really see that if you look at the different AI fields, the different areas there, they're all actually quite closely connected to human skills and senses, like knowledge-based systems, robotics, computer vision, which is like seeing things, natural language processing, which is closely connected to speaking, or machine learning, which is actually the critical aspect of AI, and the reason why AI has been such a big topic in the past couple of years. So especially in the last decade, we've seen really huge technological advances that has allowed much larger introduction of AI applications in the commercial sector. And machine learning is a central aspect here because that's essentially, as the name says, the ability of a machine to learn and to get better at certain tasks. And it's also quite important to understand the difference between 2 types of AI. Typically, they're called weak AI and strong AI. Strong AI being usually what we see in the movies, right? This superhuman AI that can do everything, super smart, and is quite futuristic. We're not talking about that today. We're talking about weak AI, which is really more like a skilled worker that can do one certain task and is really good at one specific thing that it needs to do. So we'll dive into this a little bit today. Another common definition we hear often is, AI is whatever we want to achieve in 10 years. So it's like we look at the movies, look at Hollywood, we see what's going on there. Many people expect this from AI to do whatever we see in the movies, but that's really quite futuristic and somewhere in the future. And I think it's more important to look at what we have today already. So we'll be doing a little bit of this. But first, very briefly, I want to touch on the potential of AI in general, but also for the publishing industry. I feel like AI can perform certain tasks faster, cheaper, better, more reliant and more relentless than humans can. And it can also do a lot of things that humans can't do at all. Maybe just 2 examples that relate to publishing. On the one hand, the topic of digitizing books. If we look at or if we think about a physical book that we have there, we want to turn this into something digital. In the past, you would have to sit there and type up every single word. Of course, that takes hours and hours and days. And nowadays, as many of us have done, you can just scan it, and the technology automatically detects the word and turns it into digital letters. So that's a very simple example of AI that we've all seen. A different one is complex recommendation systems, which are also quite interesting. If you think about the traditional bookstore, right? If a person goes into a bookstore and tells the bookseller, look, I like to read thrillers, I like to read Stephen King, can you recommend anything to me? It will be quite easy for the bookseller to do that. But if we have a reader who's a lot more in a certain niche sector, has a very specific taste, the bookseller might not be able to help this person, then AI can come into good effect. For example, if you look at online booksellers like what Amazon does, right? They have millions of books and they have millions and millions of users, so they can match the user consumption and buying patterns of all of these users out there to make a recommendation that is really based on your preferences, because they have many people who have similar preferences. There's just two examples of what AI can do also in the publishing world, and I will have some bigger examples in a bit. But I want to make sure that you understand that there are also a lot of limitations to AI. Like I said, we're talking about weak AI. It can't do everything out there. One of the most famous and the earliest examples of the use of AI was when IBM's AI Deep Blue beat the chess champion Garry Kasparov in 1997. So that was a turning point because, well, since then it was clear that the AI and the computers, they're always going to be better than humans at playing chess. That's a bit sad if you're a chess player and you want to play against machines. But it's also quite logical because chess is a very logical mathematical game. So it lends itself perfectly to what an AI can actually do. But it's also important to understand that this AI could only do this. It could only play chess. It didn't know it was playing chess. It didn't have any joy when winning. It could only perform this certain task. Garry Kasparov can do a lot of things that this AI can't do. He can write books. He wrote a couple. He can speak. He can sing. He can, well, hopefully he can sing. He can tie his shoelaces. He can do so many things that this AI can't do. So it's very limited in what its abilities are. And to quote him, I think it's important to understand that AI is a tool. It's a technology, but it's not a magic wand, and it's not the Terminator. So let's think in for a minute. Just one more aspect that's important to understand is the topic of accuracy. So getting to 80% accuracy with a certain tool is, depending on the set of rules, it's quite feasible. So getting to 80%, all right, that's not the big problem in many cases. But getting from 80 to 100%, being perfect in terms of accuracy, that's really quite complicated. And that's something you have to keep in mind when working with AI. There's two examples here. One example is using AI to optimize recommendation systems. This is being done if you go on Netflix and if there are 10 movies are recommended to you based on your viewing behavior. If you like 8 of those movies, 8 of them are good, 2 of them are not to your liking, that's no problem. If the 80% accuracy is here, that works fine. You can just skip those other 2 movies. It's still an okay user experience. But if you look at self-driving cars, for example, if the AI is supposed to detect people crossing the streets, and if there's 10 people crossing the streets and the AI only sees 8 of them and kills the other 2, then you're not so happy with 80% accuracy. So that's the reason why we have recommendation systems in place, but self-driving cars aren't implemented in a wider sense. They also work, but it's not 100% yet. And that's a topic where 100% is very important. So keeping that in mind, I'll show a few examples of AI in the publishing world. And don't worry, you don't have to read the entire text here. This is an example used by the Washington Post in the US, and many different media players use this as well. So the Washington Post introduced their AI called Heliograph a few years ago, where they actually turned data-based events into full-length texts, and they publish thousands of articles per year. So what they do is they take data, like you can see on the left, which is from a high school football game, right? So somebody sits in the stadium, takes notes, writes down the important points, who score a touchdown, etc. This is all put into a database. And usually, or in the past, articles would just feature the key bullet points, the numbers. But when using AI, you can actually enhance this and turn it into a larger text that you can see on the right. Now, this is not the greatest text ever written, but it can really turn pure data into something a bit more enjoyable for many readers. And this has been done on a large scale in many countries by many news publishers when you want to write about local elections, local sports event, anything that's number-based, really. So this is a great use in the content space. Something else in the content space, as an example, it comes from DeepL. It's a Germany-based translation service that's supposed to be better than Google Translate for certain tasks. So you can't use this to translate an entire book and then publish it. You could, but the result wouldn't be that great. But what's being done so far, this is used by many translators and editors to automate part of their work and make their life easier. So they enter text, press the button, have it translated, and then they can change certain words and then add their personal touch to it. So really this speeds up the process by a lot. And I know a couple of publishers who've actually bought book rights based on sample translation that were put into DeepL. So this is just a tool that makes life easier and quicker for a couple of people in the industry. Text-to-speech for audiobooks is another interesting topic. There's many companies out there, be it Rydal, Alibaba in China, Kindle, Google, Microsoft in the US, that work on enhancing the quality of text-to-speech. So you've all heard text-to-speech. It's if you have a text, you press a button and the robot basically reads out the text to you. There's varying degrees in quality. In the past, it was very robotic, but we're getting closer and closer to a more natural sounding human voice, thanks to artificial intelligence. And this will be quite interesting to view and see if we get to the point, or when we get to the point. It's more a matter of when and not if. You can just press a button. You can seamlessly move between reading an ebook, pressing a button, and then having it read to you, and make sure it sounds like a human voice. But of course, this brings some challenges with it for the audiobook industry, because there's of course many people that earn a living licensing and producing audiobooks, and there have already been some lawsuits in the US regarding this topic to make sure that this technology can't do everything it wants to. Another example is more in the marketing space, comes from Bookwire, a European ebook and audiobook distribution company. They introduced something called dynamic in-book ads within their ebooks. So what they do there is if you buy an ebook from them on Amazon or iBooks or wherever, if you scroll to the end of the ebook, if you're done, there's recommendations in the end, books you might enjoy reading, which is an advertisement to buy the next book. Now, this has been done manually on a large scale in the past, but what they've done now for all of the publishers they work with, they can automatically introduce and include the perfect upselling opportunity across the catalog. So on a daily basis, they can introduce the book by the publisher that they think, or that their AI thinks, will sell the most copies. And they track the data and they constantly optimize. So they update the assets like every day to make sure the right book is in the end. And by using this, they've increased backlist sales by up to 20% for a number of their publishers just by using this tool. A different example, this comes from a Dutch publisher that I've talked to in the past. It's a large publisher in the Netherlands, and they're actually tracking 39 different variables when they publish new books. So they look at pre-order numbers, they look at Google Trend data, they look at performance on social media by the authors to really determine in the end how many titles should we print. So it's not just a gut feeling, but it's purely number-based, and it has a machine learning component because they don't just do this on looking at a database per title, but they also feed in the actual real sales data in the end, so they actually learn from their experiences. And this way they can decide, do they print 500 books, 5,000 or 50,000 to make sure they have the right number at hand. And one last example that comes from me, of my company GOULD FINCH. We started working with publishers to analyze their catalogs. So something we did here for a number of larger publishers is we actually analyzed their authors, not in terms of content, but really purely in terms of data, looking at different trend data performance across different channels to determine how popular these authors were and how their development was over time. And by doing this, we could determine how likely the success rate of certain authors was going forward, be it for their own catalog, but also for competitor catalogs. And this is being used right now for publishers to make decisions regarding backlist marketing. Right? If you have an author that's performed well in the past couple of months, and that's already quite old, you see, okay, maybe there's a reason here why people are interested in the author. Maybe we should put a bit of money into backlist marketing. Or on the other hand, if you see a certain author is doing really well, you can approach them, see if they want to write a new book, or also approach your competition, or the publishers and the authors that are with the competition. So that's something that we are working on right now, and also using this data to make decisions which books should be turned into audiobooks. And it's still early days, but I think there's huge potential in using data to making these kinds of decisions. And to sum things up, and some of these things I haven't had the chance to say because of time, but I want to say them again. I think it's undoubtable that AI is going to be a critical success factor for publishers, for anybody out there, but we still have to remember what Gary says. So it's it's not the magic wand, it's not the Terminator, it is what you make of it. And I feel like a lot of publishers have understood. The first ones are doing interesting things, but not so many are really taking the necessary steps that I feel are important to move ahead and go with the time. But those who have already done experiments, who have started, they're quite happy with the results and the return. A lot of people are still skeptical. I think they should move past that and accept that technology is here to stay, and they should have a look at what they can actually do with it. But still, keep in mind, machines are not going to write the books anytime soon. It's still the humans writing the books. It's the machines helping us to make the process as easy as possible and to help with everything around it and to strengthen the core business. And to do that, you have to be in the right mindset. You have to have the right organizational structure to support that. Maybe also look for examples outside of publishing, see what you can learn from them, and really get started, make your own experiments. And to do that, I think collaborating with other publishers, with other companies, also getting outside experts into the game is super important. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You can start with a small budget, but it's just important that you do something. And that's my strongest pledge to you today. Just get started. You don't ignore technology, but use it for your own benefit. So thank you for your time. These are my contact details. If you want to talk, I'm happy for you to get in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Colin. And if publishers, as you said, some haven't yet realized that they must get started. So if they wanted to get started, they can talk to you, yeah?
Surely.
Okay, so that's good to know. Thank you so much for sharing this. Really good to know and to understand what AI can do and what its limits are on a broad basis. Thank you. Let's move on to Gerald. Gerald will also introduce yourself, please, a little bit, and then you'll be talking about AI and edutech. Over to you.
Right. Thank you, Claudia. Thanks for the opportunity to be here to share our perspective. It's going to be a bit tough to follow Colin's very comprehensive coverage. Try my best, but obviously with a very focused perspective from edutech and educational publishing. So my name is Gerald Chai. I am the co-founder and MD for SnapLearn. We are a augmented and virtual reality specialist, which is a spin-off company out of the National University of Singapore. So you might be wondering why AR and VR in the context of this conversation in AI, because actually AR and VR is underpinned by this foundational level of technology called computer vision. And computer vision, for those who are familiar with it, is actually one of the subset of AI, because this is where the advancements in artificial intelligence, as shared with Colin, in the field of narrow intelligence, what you call weak AI, artificial narrow intelligence. One of the subset is computer vision. which is what we actually use as the fundamental technology underpinning our offering. So just taking a bit of a step back into educational industry, and then educational publishing, and then finally the applications that we are seeing. So in education, what we typically are grappling with are three core issues. Number one is efficiency. Number two is effectiveness. Number three is engagement. So these are the three key issues that any education company, organization typically have to grapple with. In terms of the applications of AI in those areas, I would say that, for example, in efficiency, how are we using AI to disseminate information, content to a large number of users in a very timely fashion? So think of using chatbots that is able to give administrative course information to students. Think of auto-grading tools that helps the teachers to cut down time in terms of grading assignments and assessments. In terms of effectiveness, this is what we usually say the holy grail of where we hope that technology such as AI can help us with to achieve things like personalized learning, differentiated instructions. So think of smart and adaptive learning that is to change the level of content and the type of content depending on the learner's profile, their strengths and weaknesses, and whether they are an auditory or visual learner. And then finally, the third part is on engagement. So engagement is where we are talking about how do you forge a emotive connection between the learner with the content, between learners to learners, and obviously learners to teachers. Emotive connection, the stronger the engagement rates, and actually leading to better understanding and better retention. So I'm going to take that as a context and shift it to a specific examples of what our company SnapLearn is doing and how we apply AI in those areas. Okay, so very quickly, because I didn't prepare a presentation, instead I will show a quick live demo. So our app is SnapLearn. Is this clear, or is the screen too glaring? Okay. So once the user open up our app, what they do is that they open up the content. So this is an example of a publisher partner that we work with, right? Inside there's a page on the human body. This is a primary school or elementary school book. So with our app, when you scan the image, very quickly it picks up. And then now, instead of just reading about the human body, they can actually see it in 3D in AR. Right? So this is where the engagement piece, the computer vision picks up the image and then throws up this. So this is one example. I'm going to move on very quickly to another book, which is a secondary school book on biology. So same thing here. What we do is that we have a image, we have a page talking about the human heart. So what happens is that when the user takes the app, and then when they are reading this page, they take the app, they are scanning the page. Again, image recognition picks up, and then the 3D model of a heart comes out. Okay, and then the final example I'll give is another title, another book at a higher education level, which is undergraduate level book. Same thing, where there's an image of a heart. Obviously, it's in increasing difficulty, right? From a primary school level book, as I showed earlier on, to a secondary school book, to a higher education book. So the point I'm trying to make here is this. Today, what our company has to offer is actually based on current level of technology, which is based on image recognition. So we recognizes the image on each of the book. We throw out the 3D model in AR to drive the engagement, right? And then obviously it's a very efficient way of doing it. But think of this. what if with AI, we are able to automatically detect the differences between these images? Because right now, in today's context and today's technology, asking a computer software to recognize these images is actually incredibly difficult. To the computer, they are actually thinking that this could be a balloon for all its matter, right? So you need very large data set of data to be able to train the software program, the AI, the machine with the AI backend to be able to understand and differentiate between those images and what it means. But increasingly, as technology advances, what we are seeing is that the availability of data set, the availability of images publicly through TensorFlow and all these large open source data set is starting to advance to a sufficiently big and advanced stage where we are now able to tell the computer image with a certain level of accuracy, as Colin said, to be able to differentiate that this is a human body, this is a diagram, it's not just a ropes of a and all these points that the human eye can easily pick up. So what is going to be very interesting also for us is that we are also starting to incorporate natural language processing. NLP is also another branch of AI. So what it means is that instead of just looking at the image, our software is in R&D stage. Eventually, we'll be able to tell based on the keywords here, the text, to say that, all right, it's talking about human, it's talking about body, it's talking about heart, and pair up with, correspond with images that are similar to a heart. We have a certain level of confidence to say that this page is talking about a human body, about the heart, about the circulatory system. And when you scan it, it just pulls out a heart automatically. So it is a very exciting time for us in terms of, from our company's perspective, of the advancements in AI. And we are very seriously researching into these areas. And what does this mean for our publishers, partners, and generally for the publishing industry as a whole? I'll go back to the point I mentioned about the 3 key points about efficiency, effectiveness, and engagement. So imagine the day when any students with an app like this, they are able to point the app on any publications, at least in the educational field, and be able to automatically and very efficiently pick up the images and corresponding extra information like a human body heart. That's efficiency. Number 2, obviously, it will be in a much more engaging manner and very immersive. And then obviously, that hopefully lead to the last point. In a personalized context, it understands that you are a K-12 student, you are scanning a content that is of K-12, they are going to send out relevant information, age appropriate, level appropriate. So it's a very exciting time for us as Snapgirls, and we are working hard on realizing this vision. And what I will do is that if we have time at the end of this session for Q&A, I can talk more specifically into how I see the opportunities and the challenges for educational publishers generally. So over to you, Claudia.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gerald. That was very insightful. And yes, that would have been the question that I would want to ask you about educational publishing, but maybe we'll do that later at a later stage. Thank you. And let's move back to Europe, to Denmark, with Mats Rydal. Hi, Mats. We're looking forward to hearing from you about what you do, what you're working on. And yeah, please, over to you. You have to read. No, we cannot hear you. Can you hear him? We cannot hear you. here we go.
Microphone. Maybe that helps.
Yes, it does.
Okay, well, hello. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties all around. So my name is Matt Rydal. I'm VP Product for Cactus Labs. I was, until recently, co-founder of a startup called Untitled. We've been providing services to academic publishers for 8 or 9 years, the larger publishers in Europe. And now we're part of the Cactus family. And we have a number of offerings that I'd like to go through, as well as talk a little bit about what we think the future might hold and what we're working on. So
Max,
allow me to share my screen.
Yep. Your voice is not very clear, at least not to me. Can you hear him well? So la la.
Right.
If there's anything you can do about it, would be great.
Yeah, I can try to use a different microphone. How is this?
Oh, much better.
Much better. Okay. Sorry about that. I will try once again. I hope you can cut this out from the presentation. So let me just go back and share. Do you want me to start over since this is recorded?
No, that's fine. Sound? That's okay. Please go on.
Cool. Okay, so as I said, we're now part of a larger company called Cactus. We're the largest provider of author services in the world, meaning that we have a host of well-educated editors helping out authors around the globe, improving their manuscripts. So our focus is on helping authors provide better manuscripts, and that's where I really think the evolution of AI is gonna make a difference in the years to come. We have a new umbrella of products called PaperPal, which is going to be launching services to help authors in the next few months and years. So let me just advance here. In the past, Untitled has worked on providing related recommender systems, related content for a number of larger publishers. We've done automatic tagging of keywords for Springer and Nature. We've done content analysis and clustering being used, for instance, by OECD and the UN for the SDG Sustainable Development Goals, clustering them and understanding underlying literature published by the UN on these topics. It's also being used by the BMJ, for instance, for their topic portals, and essentially automating a lot of the editorial tasks that up until now has taken a lot of human effort. We're also doing expertise location. This is a reviewer finder that allows you to identify promising reviewers for incoming manuscripts. But this new product I'm going to talk about today uses some of that knowledge and those platform technologies to provide services directly to the author. And this comes in many different flavors. But before I continue, maybe a little bit of context, because what we're striving for here is really to help users create content. And that's a little bit of a long shot. In other technologies we've seen, or in other domains, we've seen AI-supported content creation. We know this from Photoshop, if you've ever tried that. We have tools that can help you remove errors or elements of an image. We can also use deep learning to transfer styles from known paintings, and like this is Van Gogh and Munch, and you can apply that directly to photographs in order to create new images as seen through the lens of an impressionist artist. Why doesn't this exist for content creation, for text? Well, it's just because text is actually much harder than pixels. It's taken many years for us to develop deep learning that can do something similar. The best we have today is Grammarly and Writeful, I guess, for academic authors, which basically helps you analyze small parts of your text and do small corrections. Very, very similar, I guess, to what Microsoft has been doing for years, and most recently with their ideas sidebar. We're providing grammar and style guidance, but we're not really taking it a whole step further. Some smaller startups are doing more interesting things, like this is Cite, that are doing analysis of citing articles. So if you're looking at an academic article, Cite will help you understand that of the articles that cited this particular article, how many actually agreed or disagreed with the key findings in this article. So this helps you basically do a little bit of fact checking or some filtering on should I be critical of this article? Is this widely accepted or not? So trends are definitely moving towards providing more sophisticated decision support and much more understanding the text in academic research. So we've taken the first step in this direction to help authors improve their manuscripts prior to submission. Because one of the key problems that we've identified that should be addressed is that authors really have to wait for a long time for submitting manuscripts and getting feedback on their submissions. And it's also a very cumbersome process. The average author spends 10 hours to submit a manuscript. You wouldn't think that, I guess. And then they have to wait anywhere between 100 and 200 days for publication, or even 2 or 3 months just to get a rejection. On the other side of the fence, editors are overburdened. They're seeing an influx in submissions from authors who are like maybe trying to submit slightly above their pay grade or slightly in a slightly more renowned journal that requires more previous authorship, which causes more rejection rate, high rejection rates, and basically frustrates editors because they spend all their time dealing with this influx of potentially not very relevant submissions. We've did a survey in our company earlier this year. We also published a report around that survey, so that shows that technical checks, which is the checks that editors perform on incoming manuscripts, are eating 80%, well, a lot of their time, and 80% of editorial offices actually do this on the first submission. It's a huge amount of effort wasted, and the editorial offices are actually prepared to get help with this assessment or help authors run assessments on their own. So this product that we've built, PaperPal Preflight, is a web-based tool that allows authors to upload their manuscripts prior to submission and get feedback so that they can correct changes themselves instead of waiting 2 or 3 months for the journal editor to come back and say, by the way, we can't accept your manuscript, please correct this before we're going to assess it. So it catches the most common errors and omissions related to both technical reporting, so the declarations you must make, and also language issues and language improvement suggestions. So we have around 30 technical checks that are currently also deployed inside the leading sort of manuscript tracking systems that the publishers use. So we're already providing technical checks there in Scholar One and Editorial Manager. Oh, sorry about this. But now we've turned around and providing this directly to the authors. So the idea, of course, is that authors can correct their manuscripts and make them drastically better, and they can actually also receive suggestions for language improvements that are trained on the 20 years of manual editing effort that Cactus has done to all of our clients. So we've built particular language models that are capable of correcting language in academic manuscripts, and we're much better than some of the more general services out there. And by doing that, they will eventually also, authors will ease on the editorial process. So having a little bit of technical issues here. So is there any integration needed? No, this is I guess a conference also directed at publishers. So you might think this is probably going to be a lot of work to integrate, but it's actually not. is just placing a link and promoting it. So it's right now live on Medicine, the Wallis Cleaver journal, and they've chosen to include Paper Pal Preflight as a recommendation in their pre-submission checklist. So authors are recommended to go there first and check out their manuscript. You can recommend it many other places, and we're seeing actually a tremendous pickup on Medicine. What does it look like? Well, basically, it's really simple. You can drag and drop a manuscript into the frame. We'll run a process, check for a number of things, declarations of ethical statement, funding statement, data access, and then we'll give you a rating. If the rating's green, you can get all of our language suggestions and corrections for free. If there are any issues identified, you can download an edited Word file for $29. And that's basically it. And you can actually go and try it out right now to see if you want to put it in front of your authors. So the business case for this is actually pretty clear. If you have a journal with around 10,000 annual submissions, the revenue improvements could be around $40,000 for just a revenue share, and plus your cost savings are actually even more. If you take on average 5 minutes to perform technical checks, then your cost reduction could be around $10,000. The payoff for the author: shorter time for first submission, fewer resubmissions, better submission experience. For the journal, monetizing the submissions, cutting costs, and improving the author experience at the same time. And for the editor, of course, fewer desk rejections, higher quality manuscripts, less time spent, and shorter time to publication. So we really think this is a no-brainer. Well, thank you for your attention, and I'll hand the microphone back to Claudia.
Thank you very much, Mats. That sounds very interesting, and obviously also your business case shows that there's a lot in it for authors and for editors. So yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We have high hopes for this. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And from Europe, we go back to Jakarta and on to Alfred.
Hi, everyone. Well, okay, let me do some sharing, because I think I'm the only one that came from really back to the engineer and a researcher, although that I read some books that I'm totally learning from all of you guys. And I think it's a kind of moment as well, because it's a good sharing, basically. So let me start my document as well. Wait a second. Yeah. So you guys can see my slides?
Yes.
All right, let me start a bit. I mean, basically, again, good day, everyone. Such a pleasure for me to have this moment sharing about piece of knowledge, definitely, in short period of times. Indeed, thank you for the organizer, definitely, to hosting this virtual event, right? Well, I watched a great insight from Colin, Gerald, and Mats, and I believe that what I will bring in here is only a small part of activities in the industry, especially from the research perspective. Again, my name is Alfred. I'm a researcher from Samsung Research, and it's very interesting for me to share a bit from the device company perspective that might relate it with the intelligence, especially when you're talking about AI in here, that probably also can be benefit for the publisher, right? Let's start for the next slide. But again, before I start, stay safe and healthy. Keep innovate yourself for better tomorrow, right? So, well, everyone knows that, as it mentioned from earlier from speakers, I mean, Colin and Gerald mentioned as well, Mats, AI is a branch of computer science that aims of create intelligence machine. It has basically become an essential part of the technology industry. In this slide, what do we see from this picture that representing AI? Well, definitely not about the logos. That's not my logos, but the activities that can represent AI in our daily life. Well, research associated in AI is highly technical and specialized. The core problem of AI, including programming computers, somewhat and conclude about the knowledge, reasoning, problem solving, perception, learning, planning, ability to manipulate and move on the objects. And basically, with that, its potential to compute and analyze the huge amount of data, any kind of advanced machine learning techniques are being used in business to perform complex jobs quicker and more efficiently. I show what, I watch what being shown by Gerald and also by Matt's about the technology here. But again, with our way of thinking, why we need an AI? Well, basically, we are growing at a huge rate, say in terms of population, knowledge, and jobs, and many others. Our increase in scale also increased the entropy of systems, demanding of huge amount of numbers of the things that to be automated and centralized. Basically, AI, in simple words, is implementing human senses into machines. Although we are seeing automation jobs leading to job cutting, maybe someday publisher will be no longer necessary to print out the books, as they are will be automatically represented in the smart devices. But again, what will be the job the writer and the author in here? In any way, in the positive terms, it's going to major shift and for all of us. So let's move to the next slide. So again, I believe everyone in here is using at least one smart devices, either smartphones, smart wearables, or other devices and smart gadgets. So the things we use, carry, wear on daily basis are growing on intelligent space, right? More and more our appliances are able to detect changes in their environment and modify our behavior based on those changes. Pressure sensors are one of the technology enabling smarter consumer electronics. Adding the sensors to consumer devices basically will give us the new entire dimension to explore the information and basically to improve the user experience. I can see also a very interesting part that what Gerald made it in terms of like vision. It's really intriguing in here, making what is our next product stand from the crowd, right? And well, we can see also from the current product portfolio in the market, what also like what Matt's presented. And anyway, it's many kind of things though. But in the enterprise domain, there's a lot of buzz surrounding the IoT as well. In a world which everything's smart and connected, including the publishing industry, in making about the data come together in the new ways, and it's always a potential change to changes all the transform all the aspect in our life. Well, in a data-driven world, smart devices will communicate each other and to coordinate action in a common platform. So next slide, please. Okay. So, well, in this slide, I just want to share about the efficiency that drive the device capability. Well, these dramatic changes are just basically the beginning. Machine learning in general continue in their expansion from what today largely classified and perceptual tasks to roles that make an impact across the complex stack of mobile and embedded computing. Machine learning basically in here already have become the core of algorithm for autonomous systems, from smartphones, robots, drones, cars, and many others. More broadly, we are basically witnessing the discovery how the system component and algorithms can have their performance and function radically improved by the integration of deep neural networks. So in short, I can say in here that basically we are enabling the state-of-the-art techniques across all the systems. It was mentioned, like what Gerald mentioned in here, and also what Matt's mentioned in here. There is a computer vision, there is NLU, NLP as well, and many others, right? And the other things, we should also have a concern about the user privacy. Well, for sample case in publishing work, it will be one of the good support to automate the intellectual property among the writers, right? With the current research and the open source framework, there is no need developing a range of simple, complex machine learning models. So there's a lot of tools that already easily to be used, like simple enabled AI application, like Overleaf, Grammarly, or even in the Google Docs, right? And there will be a real-time execution without dependency on the network connectivity. That's actually part on the challenging area, what we call it on-device approach. And I think that's many others. And I believe there is a lot of things that we can bring up to the tables with the capability improvements. Let's move to the next slide. Okay. So in here, I just want to share an overview about our background that drive on-device research activities. Well, there has been a constant movement of AI toward edge devices. This has been possible due to the increase of computing power, coupled with an improvement in AI algorithms and the production of the robust hardware and software, from the TensorFlow software, Caffe, chipset, and many others. These advancements basically have made it possible to run machine learning solution on smartphone and other smart devices, rather in cloud processes, and this trend somehow is increasing, right? Well, in media journalism, it can be a powerful use case, especially when they write a story in the field. As we're talking about publishing agency, there are also about some benefit and challenges that they might facing, like automated text analysis to help them more accurate proofreading or plagiarism checking, something like that. Automatic text tagging and formattings. I think some of the features already mentioned also by Mats, also about the content personalization and translation and many others, right? Basically, that will be bring on-device research use case more appealing to various industries. And in Samsung Research, we're working to more improve in this cognitive usage of content creators or writers to be having the improvement of their productivity using the many smart devices features from vision, text, speech, and many other things, right? So let's move to the next slide, right? In the summary, to conclude, I can say that AI has become a trendsetter within our global market. Today, all the publishing agency, whether it's big or small, whether directly associated with the user or consumer or not, are start to benefiting from the AI usage. Basically, as it mentioned also with Colin, AI will need a trustworthy algorithms and the right data to train them. A plan to grow revenue and profits with AI, and integration with existing and emerging technologies. And how we implementing toward this to the publisher? There will be challenges and opportunities, of course. Again, adopting deep learning and various constrained classes of computing, such as smartphones and smart sensors and other intelligent devices, these things become common, and it will be great if we can have a good collaboration together, starting from a small step and use case of learning to improve our life. Well, I like to close with my favorite quotes, right? The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Anyway, this will be my last slide. And again, much appreciated for the times. And I think that I will give back the time to the organizer, to Claudia. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. Yes, the future is here. It's not evenly distributed. I think that's a very good quote. Hopefully, the vaccine is going to be evenly distributed soon, so that we might depend less on AI. No, that of course we won't, because the future is here, as you said. Thank you very much for these thoughts and insights. Yeah, we have almost come to the end of our session, unfortunately. We should have planned much more time because these topics are so interesting to discuss. However, just one more last question for everyone. Gerald, what is your, one word, what is your advice for educational publishers?
In terms of adopting
AI.
and using AI,
Mm-hmm.
I think one word would be difficult. I would say, the general statement is give it a go. As Alfred has said, right now there's so much advancement in the field of AI. it's not as expensive as you think it is. It is because there's lots of open source platforms out there, and the computing power is getting so good, and I'm a firm believer in the human creativity and ingenuity. So if we give the tools, we show them the possibilities, some examples. I'm pretty sure even a industry that is so-called traditional, like publishing, will be able to come up with very creative use cases. And as a technologies, as a technology company, we are able and we are more than happy to partner with them to ideate and turn those ideas into reality. So that would be what I will say to our publishers.
Thank you. Matt, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so one last question to you. When will AI substitute authors?
Well, hopefully never. I think research, of course, should be supported by all the technology available. But I think when I look at what we've accomplished in the last few years, I think we've come a long way. I think publishing industry has adopted technology in many different places and are following a clear path that I think is makes me very hopeful. It is a very traditional industry, and I think in many locations or many workflows, we're challenged to prove the efficiency of the algorithms that we provide, and I think we need to be able to come up with data to prove that we have accuracy and that we don't miss important things. As I think Colin said, you don't want your self-driving car to miss 2 out of 10 pedestrians, right, crossing the street. So but the fact of the matter is also that today there's actually what we call the tragedy of the status quo. Publishers are rarely aware of the accuracy of their current manual processes. And I think so if I was to maybe incite some kind of change, I would ask publishers to be more aware of the failures and the inaccuracies that they already have in their manual processes, because it's quite obvious that automation can help improve accuracy for some kinds of processes, and probably it'll be harder to use AI for other tasks. But I think the way to implement automation is to first understand where you're currently falling a bit short and where technology might help you. And so you need to track your own performance and measure your own accuracy, and that takes a lot of effort, actually. But I think that's the next big challenge, because otherwise you're never going to get a budget to do one of these exciting new projects.
True. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. And Alfred, since we're talking about AI and publishing, what's your advice for the publishers in Indonesia? Perhaps also in connection with devices.
Well, thank you. It's interesting though. Basically, I'm following what Gerald said, and also Matt and Colin, and trying to summarizing here. Basically, to the old publisher and also the writers, without any change, there is no innovation, creativity, or incentive for improvement. So basically, those who initiate change will have a better opportunity to manage the change that will be available. So the true sign of the AI is not the knowledge, but the imagination. So I think it's a matter that people trying to improve the life, that's the most important though. So it's back to the humanity as well. So that's my quote.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this was a really interesting session. Thank you so much to all of you for taking the time to contribute to the session. I learned a lot, certainly. And it's interesting to hear that you, Alfred, ended this with creativity, because that's why we're here. That's why we're at JakTent, to talk about creativity, to talk about the different creative industries. And we also talk a lot about digital publishing. So in this JakTent, there are more sessions about digital publishing, and we welcome all of you to join us for other sessions. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Alfred, Gerald, Colin, and Mats. I hope to see you all in person soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Mengawali hari dengan informasi terkini, menjadi sumber referensi dan inspirasi di setiap aktivitas. Melalui news video portal, segala informasi dapat disajikan cepat, akurat, dan lengkap. Dengan kekuatan teknologi digital, Medcom.id hadir dengan berita pilihan yang dikemas secara menarik. Medcom.id, digitally inspire people.
Sudah 15 menit, masih kejebak macet.
Tenang. Daripada emosi, 15 menit Anda jadi lebih berharga kalau bersama saya.
15 Minutes, setiap Rabu, jam 6 sore lewat 45 menit. Mediaindonesia.com hadir dengan opini cerdas dan narasumber kredibel, mudah diakses, informasi berkualitas ada di genggaman Anda. Klik di browser Anda, www.mediaindonesia.com. Dan temukan pandangan berbeda, karena fakta bisa sama, sudut pandang boleh beda. Mediaindonesia.com, views and news.
Dalam setiap denyut kota, saya selalu menjadi saksinya. Disiarkan lebih dari 20 televisi jaringan JOPOS Group. JOPOS TV paling Indonesia. Kebebasan pers dan gelombang era digital menghadirkan ribuan bahkan jutaan informasi dan data setiap harinya. Beragam data dan informasi berserak di berbagai tempat seiring dengan perubahan dunia yang bergerak begitu cepat. Media-media baru pun bermunculan, namun kualitas informasi seolah tak lagi menjadi prioritas. Bahkan, tak sedikit yang abai pada etika jurnalisme. Untuk menjawab tantangan itu, Kata Data hadir sejak April 2012 sebagai portal media di bidang ekonomi dan bisnis. Beragam sektor diulas mulai dari finansial, energi, pangan, hingga industri kreatif dan digital. Artikel mendalam dan komprehensif dengan sajian infografik yang menarik menjadi karakter utama dari Kata Data. Kata Data berikhtiar untuk terus menyajikan beragam informasi berkualitas untuk kemajuan negeri dan untuk kepentingan bisnis Anda. Kami percaya demokrasi yang sehat tumbuh dari kehadiran informasi dan data yang akurat.
Kalau bicara pakai data.
Hidup terlalu pendek untuk membiarkan pemikiran-pemikiranmu, ide-idemu terdiam begitu saja. Untuk berubah, kita perlu melangkah. Dan langkah itu lahir dari sebuah inspirasi. Republika, start moving.